Hey there, it's your boy Foxy, back for more relationship stories. Update: house guest had a deadbolt installed after being reminded that he'll have to leave soon. Questions about the situation in general, but specifically the locksmith's liability here. Original post: a childhood friend of my wife's, let's call him Pete, moved back to the area after the death of a parent and losing his job. We offered to let him crash in our spare bedroom for a month or so while he gets things figured out. Pete moved in on March 28th, and we had him sign something that said that he'd split on June 30th, whether he had his situation sorted or not. This was partially to put a hard limit on the amount of time he'd be living with us, but primarily because my brother is going to spend about 6 weeks in town for work starting in mid-July, and will be staying with us. Pete didn't seem to be in much of a rush to find a new job, let alone find his own place, but he's in a bit of a funk due to the whole situation, so we've been giving him the benefit of the doubt. On the 1st of June, my wife reminded Pete of the fact that he had to go at the end of the month. He said not to worry, and that he'd definitely have something figured out by then. She gave him the same reminder this Wednesday, June 12th. I'll spare you the details, but this time, Pete countered by confessing that he'd always been in love with her, and that she should leave me, and I could find a new place while they stay in the apartment. Which is sort of funny, because while I consider this to be her apartment as much as mine, I purchased it before we met and her name isn't on anything. Anyway, she obviously shut this down immediately, and Pete did not respond well, at all. No violence, but a ton of shouting, insulting, and attempting to guilt trip. It was intense enough that my wife just cut out to her mother's place, where she called me to fill me in on the situation. I went home from work and told Pete that we'd stick to the agreement despite his behavior, but the sooner he was out, the better. I spoke to my wife later that evening, and we decided that till Pete leaves, she'll stay in an investment property of mine that is luckily vacant right now. But I'd start working remotely and stay at the apartment more or less 24/7. Both to make sure Pete doesn't do anything stupid, and because my presence in the living room would hopefully be more than a little awkward for him. So this morning around 6, I left to run to the office to grab some stuff I'll need while working from home. I got back to the apartment about half an hour ago, and as I stepped out of the elevator, I saw a guy with a toolbox leaving my apartment, and immediately noticed that a new deadbolt had been installed in the door. I tried to explain the situation to the locksmith, but he basically told me that the lock's already in, and he gave the only key to the guy in the apartment, so it's between the two of us now. Lovely. I asked him for a card, and he said he didn't have any, so I asked where he works. He told me that it isn't any of my business, and reiterated that this is between me and Pete. I followed him downstairs, and luckily he was in a van that had a sticker with the company's name and info on the side. I called the number, asked to speak to the boss, and told him what had happened. He more or less did his best to not answer any of my questions, saying, "I'm sorry, but I don't have to inform you of our policies." Fun. So this is where I am at now. I called the police just to get a report filed, but I am 100% sure that when the officers show up, they're going to tell me that it's a civil issue. I'm not expecting them anytime soon, as this is a pretty small potatoes deal in the city where the whole thing is taking place. I was actually all set to offer Pete a cash for keys deal if he wasn't getting his act in gear by June 23rd, but I have a feeling that I am going to have to evict now. I own a few investment properties and have gone through the eviction process before, so I know that will not be a fun process given how tenant-friendly my state is, but it is what it is. We've got that vacant rental property to stay in while everything gets sorted out, so that's covered as well. My only questions now are about who I can go after for what. On that note, here are my questions. I am going to lose money on the rental that my wife and I will be staying in while the eviction gets handled. In fact, I've already done so, as I had just started advertising it, and will now have to pull the listing on a few sites, or drop a "sorry but" on anyone who responds to print ads I placed. Is this something I can sue for? In my mind, I'd name both Pete and the locksmith company in a suit, and let the judge decide who owes me what. But since I am making the decision for us to occupy the space, do I technically have damages? When I got a deadbolt installed at my old rental, I had to show the locksmith a copy of my lease before they'd even touch the door. Was that just a company policy they were following, or is that mandated by law? If the latter, is there anything I can go after them for? I don't care if it's trying to get criminal charges pressed or just going the civil route. I am not hurting for money, so frankly if I were to sue, it would be more about taking the pound of flesh that I feel I am entitled to after they locked me out of my own home. But I'd be just as happy seeing the pound of flesh extracted in a manner that does not end with me in possession of it. Anything else that I should be thinking about in this situation? I am planning on asking the police to do a civil standby or whatever it's called, so I can get a few important things out of the apartment. I am a little flustered and angry right now to say the least, so I just want to make sure that there isn't anything I should be considering beyond that. Thanks in advance, and the cops are actually pulling up now, so I might have an update shortly. He was there more than 30 days. You are going to need to evict him if he is an ass and chooses not to leave. Him trying to lock you out was idiotic on his part. Document it and it will help you. Most states do not have laws requiring locksmiths to obtain specific proof. Most reputable companies will always ask for it, so you can take them to court. However, your tenant may have provided them some proof or residency like his driver's license or some type of bill. You can most likely only sue them for losses caused by their action, which he would have to document. If you reside there, I wouldn't leave. You have just as much right to live there. If it is your primary residence, provide proof of residence and have the police force him to let you enter and give you a key to the locks he had changed. He illegally evicted OP. Let's not forget that. He doesn't own the property, nor is he subletting to OP. He didn't and literally can't evict OP. What he did was vandalize OP's property and has illegally locked him out. If the locksmith doesn't come through for you and won't change the locks, what about forcibly entering? I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine that there's nothing illegal about breaking into your own apartment. Of course, you'd still have to deal with evicting him, but at least you'd have access to your property. The superintendent already told me I just have to say the word, and he'll grab some gear to help me force entry, but I'm gonna hold off on that till I hear from my attorney. That's a pretty cool super. Let's just say that this guy gets a sick tip from us around Christmas. He's a great super in terms of managing the building, but he's an even better guy who happens to be freaking hysterical. Edit/updates. Just heard from the owner of the locksmith, who sounded about as angry as I am. He's sending a guy over with a new deadbolt and a few extra keys. Apparently, he's already arranged for his dude to show up with some cops in case Pete is not a fan of the lock being changed. Bonus, in explaining that part to me, I got to hear somebody say, I know a guy who knows a guy in real life, and now I want to hang out with this dude. Mother-in-law took the wife out to get her mind off of this stuff, but she is now being returned to me, so I'm gonna stop staring at the internet. The locksmith will be here around 8 p.m., and Pete's brother is going to swing through around the same time to see if he can talk some sense into him. Thanks for all of the advice and well wishes. I'll try to update again tonight if anything interesting happens, but at this point, it will more likely be tomorrow, Sunday. Second update. So I got a call while I was getting ready to head back to the apartment to meet the locksmith. It was Pete's brother. Apologies for the lack of details here, but I don't know too much about exactly what went down. And a chunk of what I do know is sort of personal stuff that the brother, who just did me an enormous favor, probably wouldn't want me sharing. Anyway, the gist of the phone call was that he went by and performed a third-party constructive eviction with the back of his hand. So Pete's gone, as is most of his stuff. His brother is going to swing by next week to grab any odds and ends that they may have missed. I am planning on making him dinner and hitting him off with a bottle of good whiskey when he does so. As far as Pete goes, I'm thinking that I'll follow through with at least the early part of the eviction process, just in case he tries anything cute. Gonna speak to my attorney about this first, but he's still in the wind. Turns out he's staying at a cabin his girlfriend's family owns, and it's pretty much as close to being in the middle of nowhere as human-built structures get. His admin or paralegal, I don't know what she is specifically, but she said that yesterday was the one day he wasn't going into town for cell service. This gives us the opportunity to convince him that the situation is currently way worse than it ever was. And as much as I love this guy, he's really fun to mess with, so that's cool. After speaking with him, I called the owner of the locksmith to let him know that the apartment was vacant, so his guy wouldn't need to show up with police. Turns out he was planning on coming by to handle this himself anyway, so that was easy enough. I met him over there. He had a handful of deadbolts for me to choose from, and he switched out the lock in about 5 minutes. We got to talking about baseball because that's what you do in New York, and this led to him accepting my offer to buy him a beer so we could watch the White Sox smack our Yankees around. I got some backstory at the bar, and while this is secondhand information, the dude seems pretty reliable, so I've got no reason not to believe him. The guy who came over yesterday morning was indeed an employee of his, but he wasn't on the clock and actually borrowed the deadbolt without mentioning anything. Turns out he is an old friend of Pete's and had been fed a story about an insane landlord who had decided to move into the apartment Pete was renting. Brilliant. Anyway, my new locksmith buddy told me that this guy was officially unemployed as of that afternoon. I would feel bad for the dude, but I'm too busy not caring about what his motivation was due to the complete and total lack of any attempt to verify the story he'd been fed. This also explains the non-answers I got when I called the shop. The person I spoke to was a manager who had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. He was basically trying to buy some time to speak with the owner and the guy who installed the deadbolt, instead of just pulling an excuse out of his butt for me. I wish he'd told me that in the first place, but I do appreciate the fact that he didn't just try to go into cover your butt mode for the company, or his now former co-worker. All in all, I have a new preferred locksmith for when I need something done at any of my properties. So really, the only legal stuff left is the restraining order, and Pete very kindly sent my wife a few emails last night upon figuring out that she'd blocked his number. Not gonna go into details, but I'll just say that the contents should make the restraining order easy to get. So thanks for all of the help and well wishes, but it seems like this is more or less a wrap, and a pretty amusing one too. My wife's gone from upset about the whole thing to uncharacteristically indignant, which she's admitted is kind of cathartic for her, so I don't even have a reason to feel guilty about laughing about what a moron Pete is. Again, thanks all. Why am I not surprised the first locksmith was a friend of Pete? I knew he had to be, if he magically showed up the moment OP stepped out. Locksmiths generally aren't that speedy. I'm not screwing up my job for any of my friends. Locksmiths get paid well from what I know too. That guy screwed himself over. We just had to have a locksmith rekey 3 of the doors in our office because an employee who got fired refused to meet us to hand over his copy of the key. $900 for 2 hours work. Anyway, the gist of the phone call was that he went by and performed a third-party constructive eviction with the back of his hand. Pete's brother is completely done with his BS. I imagine Pete's brother is done with a lot of things. Imagine losing a parent. If Pete did, it's more than likely his brother did. And while you're dealing with that, you hear that your sibling has sexually harassed his longtime friend and locked himself in an apartment that isn't his. Anyone would be mad as hell when they got there. My brother did too much LSD once, and his friends/roommates called me because he was getting out of control. At this point, I was done with his shenanigans of the last few months prior, so I got there, smacked him. He's younger than me but taller, and at the time much heavier, but I just stood on a chair and told him he needed to stop being an idiot and stop harassing his friends. He now tells me he's glad I did that because he was in a fast downward spiral. And after that, he managed to realize he was being a huge jerk and idiot. Now for the last story. My 34 male girlfriend, 32 female, is dying and trying to set me up with her best friend 32 female. My girlfriend of 10 years has terminal cancer. She's in her final weeks of life. We have no children because her health has long been a concern. She's fought cancer several times through her life. We never got married because she is not a believer in the practice, but I would have married her in a heartbeat if she'd wanted it. I love her desperately and always will. 3 months ago, she made the decision to stop the chemo and let things happen on their own. She has been fading fast ever since. She is now bedridden on hospice and sleeps most of the time, but she is still able to communicate when she is awake. All her life, she's had the same best friend. Her best friend is a wonderful, sweet person and a single mother of 2 young boys. Their father was bad, and she lived with us for a while when she was getting back on her feet after leaving him, and during that time, her sons became very close with me. I've always been the male figure in their lives and I enjoy being around them genuinely. I also have a great deal of admiration for their mother, but my feelings toward her have never been attraction of any kind. I love her for the person she is, and because she's always been so important to the woman I'm in love with. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend spoke to me privately and told me that when she is gone, she wants me to continue to be there and take care of her friend and the boys. I told her that of course I would, and she shouldn't be worried about any of that. Then she told me that she wanted me to date her friend. You two would be good together and it just makes sense. She will take good care of you too, she said. She brings it up almost every day now. She had a similar conversation with her friend. Obviously, this isn't something I am interested in pursuing, and her friend doesn't really seem to want it either. But recently during a conversation, her friend said to me, "It's a dying wish. We can just pretend until she's gone that we're considering it and make her feel better." I don't even want to do that though. I want my girlfriend to know that without a doubt she is the love of my life, and I have no interest in pursuing anyone else. She's been the one for me. How do I express this to her without having her feel like I'm denying her any final wishes in life or disregarding her opinion about what I should do with the future? Now for the advice. It's a dying wish. We can just pretend until she's gone that we're considering it and make her feel better. Not sure about that. Sounds like a chick flick movie. You pretend until you don't. How do I express this to her without having her feel like I'm denying her any final wishes in life or disregarding her opinion about what I should do with the future? Babe, I know you want what's best for me, your friend, and her children, but right now we're still in the present. I love you and I want us to focus on our relationship, not on others. You already trying to matchmake hurts me. As a person who has an incurable cancer that has been chock full of complications, that's a lot of the answer right there. She's worried. Soothe the fears and tell her you'll move on when you're ready, but right now you want to spend this time focused on her and your relationship. Also, as someone with cancer, I agree. My view when reading this is that she wants the two most important people in her life to be okay. UOP to be there for her friend and children, who sound like they have had a terrible time in life, and for her friend to help and support UOP when she is no longer around. There has been some really good advice on this thread, and I will say if it were me in your shoes, OP, I would want to make sure the love of your life knows that you are there for her. You have no regrets in your life, you are sad the way things have worked out, but that you will be okay. You will continue to be there for her friend and children because they are your friends too, and you want to help them because they are good people. You know they will be there to help you as well. But as said, that does not need to be a relationship. But you understand why she is saying that. Also, OP, I know how hard everything has been for you all, and I know from my own experience that processing the reality that someone has cancer is literally the worst thing I have ever been through. Personally, I found telling others I have cancer was worse. I relived a wave of anxiety, fear, and anger every single time I broke the news to someone. After every doctor appointment, waking up every morning and having those first few seconds of calm, before remembering and reliving everything again. This repeated barrage resulted in me to have a massive drive to ensure everyone in my life will be set. They will be fixed. They will be fine. Even reading your thread, I want you to be okay. Hey there, it's your boy Foxy, back for more relationship stories. Update: my wife went out last night and didn't come home until this morning. Original post: this is horrible and I'm furious right now, but I'm also depressed as hell. I know what I have to do. It's just killing me that I have to do it. It's fresh and it hurts a lot. My wife didn't come home last night. She went out with a couple of girlfriends, which is pretty normal for her. She's normally back around 2 a.m. on these nights, so I waited up. Around 2:30, I called to check in. She answered, and I could hear people in the background. She told me they went to a party but were leaving in a couple of minutes. She wasn't home by 3, so I texted. It delivered, but no reply. Around 4 a.m., I called again. It rang a couple of times before she sent me to voicemail. My wife finally came stumbling through the door at 6:47 this morning. I know the exact time because I was worried. She was wearing a dress she didn't leave the house in, with mesh leggings I've never seen either. The leggings had clearly been torn, and her makeup was smudged. My heart sank when I saw her. My immediate worry was that she had been assaulted. She only shook her head no when I asked her that. I asked her what she had been doing then, and she only said that I knew what she had been doing. And that kind of confirmed what the voice in the back of my head had been screaming since she walked in. My wife cheated on me last night. I asked her who it was. She shrugged almost casually and said it was somebody they met at the club. She went back to his house and hooked up with him, then Ubered home. She then said she didn't want to fight and just wanted to sleep. So that's what she did. She's still asleep now and didn't even take a shower before passing out. Suffice to say, our relationship is over. We don't have any kids, and we rent, so it shouldn't be an extremely complicated process. I keep trying to reason myself out of it, pretending there might be something to salvage here. I've always maintained that cheating would be a red line for me though, and I think I need to stick to that now. Now for the top advice before reading the update. If cheating is your deal breaker, and it's a totally reasonable one, the deal has been broken. When she wakes up, she's going to give you the whole song and dance that she was drunk, that she loves you, etc., etc. But the truth is, she broke your trust and your heart and your vows. Stick to your guns and leave the woman who doesn't respect you enough to stay faithful. Thank you. I don't know why it helps to hear it from another person, but it really does. I honestly don't know that I want to hear her out right now. It's not like I'm going to believe anything she tells me anyway. Also, drunk or not, it doesn't sound like by the interaction you two had she cared one iota. She didn't even try to hide the fact she cheated. You keep trying to reason yourself out of it because this just happened, and you're still in shock. The feeling of betrayal is still going to be there when the shock fades, so don't let yourself humor her now. Also, just to be 100% safe, I'd recommend an STD screening. This might not be the first time she's done something of this nature. I really don't think she's done this multiple times. If she had, she'd likely have come home and told me right away anyways. She's always been the type of person who can't keep things bottled inside. I will get tested though, it can't hurt, though I am a little scared of needles. You didn't think she'd do it the first time either. It doesn't hurt to be safe than sorry. If she's done it once, you would proceed in the assumption she's done it before, especially given her attitude. Damn man, sounds like she wanted you to catch her. Like this is not the first time. That thought has crossed my mind too. How casual she was about it doesn't match with the fact that she came home in clothes I've literally never seen her in. Now for the first update. Alright, things have happened. I am no longer at home, I left. I wasn't able to get the day off work today though, so I'm writing this on my lunch now. It's been a struggle keeping myself together today, honestly. I've had to sneak off to the bathroom twice to cry. Things rough, dude. I'll post something more detailed later on, because holy freaking shit, there's a lot. I'm exhausted. I've only slept about 4 hours total since this all happened. It's gonna be a lot of text, probably longer than the first one by a bit. Also, to the woman who felt compelled to send me a topless picture, thanks, but also no thanks. My heart just isn't in that sort of thing right now. Please kick your soon-to-be ex out of the house. Don't give her the satisfaction of being the sole proprietor of a house you bought together after wronging you. It sounds like she wants you to file a divorce, but one that would end on her terms. She purposefully lied to you about when she would come home. She probably wanted you to stay awake to be agitated, and then make you even more angry by confessing to her infidelity in the coldest way imaginable. That you could have hurt her while you're angry so she can have evidence against you in court. She may have been drunk, but that wouldn't make her less calculating. OP says they rent the place in the original post. I'm glad the process is easier for them now. I have been through this with my first wife. I threw all her stuff in the front yard. She didn't show up for the divorce, so judge granted me divorce in 5 minutes. Hang in there, bro. It will get better. Now for the second update. Me again, folks. I'm sorry I didn't get around to this sooner. I wasn't able to get the day off work yesterday because my boss kind of sucks. I was a complete mess at work yesterday though, so I was allowed to take the rest of the week as vacation, thankfully. I think I went through all of the stages of grief while my soon-to-be ex was sleeping. I wasn't expecting my post to get any attention at all. I just figured I needed to try to talk to someone about it because I was not in a good headspace. I made the post in the morning, and by noon she was still conked out in the bedroom. I had processed things a bit more, and I had a rough plan in my head that I was starting to set in motion. I made a short list of questions I wanted answers to, gathered up all my important documents, laptop, etc. Then I went into the bedroom and started packing myself a suitcase. I know a lot of folks wanted me to kick her out. I did consider it. But honestly, I'm not overly attached to this place. We just rent, and I'm in a lucky enough situation to be able to say that paying half the rent for a few months isn't going to financially end me. It'll sting a little bit, I won't lie, but I'll make it, and I feel like being around this place is only going to remind me of her anyway. I need to be looking forward, not back. She ended up waking up about halfway through me packing my suitcase. There was momentary confusion as she looked around the room. Then she just started bawling. Maybe this is awful of me, but I didn't bother comforting her. I told her I had the screenshots of her Uber and text messages from her phone, and that, plus her confirmation, was enough that things between us were completely done. She didn't answer me and just cried louder. I debated trying to continue the conversation, but I decided to just pack the rest of my suitcase and head back out to the living room until she came out. When she finally left the bedroom, she sat next to me on the couch and asked me if we could talk things through. I told her as calmly as possible that wasn't how things were going to work. I was going to ask questions, and I wanted honest answers. She told me she'd be honest, so I proceeded. My voice was shaking the entire time. It was taking me everything to hold it together, but I kept going. Was this the first time she had cheated? She started crying before she answered that, then told me no. She had cheated on me multiple times over the course of our relationship. It was, and I'm going to use her words exactly here, just sex, a way for me to let off steam. None of it ever meant anything. I wrote a comment shortly after making my post, that all the love couldn't just fade away in one swoop. Well, it can. It hit me right then that I wasn't dealing with my wife. The person I was married to literally wasn't in the room. This was someone different. She refused to tell me exactly how many times she had cheated, just more than last night. Had she used protection? No hesitation from her before she nodded her head emphatically. She seemed surprised I'd even asked that. I'm still going to get tested just to be safe. I did some research into timing, and I'm going to look after it. Were her friends also cheating on their spouses? Yes and no. I tried to get her to tell me which of her friends were cheating so I could get in contact with their spouses. She probably should have, because her refusal led to me messaging pretty much the romantic partner of every one of her girlfriends I could find on social media. There are a couple I don't know or couldn't find, but I did my part. Why did she do it? This was the answer that gutted me the most. I'm going to use her exact words again. I need to have variety. I told her that it's not like our intimate life is dull. She clarified, it's not the same as something new. I didn't even have a response to that one. I had expected something about me working too much or not supporting her emotionally. Nope, she just banged other guys because she felt like it and wanted to have some fun. When I didn't respond, she started asking me about counseling and therapy. I reiterated that our relationship was over. I'd be leaving. What she did next disgusted me. My ex actually tried to be intimate with me. She put her hands on me and started trying to take off my clothes. I felt like I wanted to vomit and pushed her away after a couple of seconds. She just kept telling me that she would figure out a way to fix it, that we would work through it together. I told her that there was no way, and she started bawling again. She went to the bathroom and locked herself inside. I was just sick of everything at that point, so I called her mother and told her what was going on. The full story too, the cheating, the questions I had asked, and the fact I was leaving. I've always had a good relationship with my ex's parents. They both decided to drive to town, which is about an hour for them. Once I knew someone was on the way, I just grabbed my things and left. Her waterworks in the bathroom were just annoying me because it felt hollow to me, especially given the answers to my questions. I ended up packing another bag before I left, and took all the things that I could think of that I felt sentimental attachment to, with me. I found a parking lot and sat in my car until I was able to get in contact with a buddy for a place to crash. I tried to take a nap, but I was running on way too much adrenaline. I knew when her parents had made it to the apartment because she started calling me. When I didn't answer those, she started texting me. She had gone from sad and crying to furious. Apparently, I'm a freaking piece of trash for telling her mom everything. Whoops, I'm not sorry. I've received roughly 100 texts from her since leaving. They range from name-calling, all the way to begging me to come back, to sending me pictures of the food she ate for some reason. I haven't responded to any of them. I feel like I said my piece before leaving. So that's where I'm at now. We didn't have joint finances, so that part was easy. I canceled all the subscriptions that go to my credit card just to be sure, and changed all my important passwords. I'm crashing on a friend's couch for the next bit, but I've got some feelers out to some short-term rental places until I can find something more permanent. I've got feelers out for a divorce attorney too. A coworker of mine had a recommendation, so barring something better, I'll probably go with them. I also wanted to say that I was shocked how supportive everyone was, and thank you for that. Truly, from the bottom of my heart. It isn't easy for me to talk about emotional things with people close to me. This was an invaluable venting place for me. Thank you all so much. Glad you've had the strength to get out of there and not put yourself through more of your ex's BS. I find it funny that she started crying now. Seems like a complete flip from how heartless and cold she was to you when she first came home. Good riddance and good luck to your future OP. I honestly don't know if she was crying because I was leaving, or just because she was caught and the little universe she had built for herself was crumbling. I'd like to think she cared I was leaving on some level, but her response to the whole thing does make me question. I'm looking into therapy, but as weird as it sounds, I want the anger to fuel me a little longer. The crying was the same reason a child cries when it gets caught with its hand in the cookie jar. The way she responded and acted, and her reasoning behind all of it, tells me she didn't care. She just cared about getting caught and that this will change her way of living. Honestly, her crying sounds way more attention-seeking and obnoxious, and she only did that to get sympathy from her ex and back together with him. Yeah, right. Like that's going to work. Also, she's delusional. Goddamn. None of it ever meant anything. That line that so many cheaters use perfectly illustrates how selfish these people are. I read several cheaters posting online using that same excuse. I don't know, maybe there is some truth to it. Maybe in the moment, they aren't thinking about their spouse. It still doesn't change the decisions they make to continually mislead, but maybe it's not an outright lie. To them it didn't mean anything. And the bit they say not with words but actions is that, neither do you. She's freaking mental, and the fact she had the gall to call you a piece of trash despite her treachery and dishonesty is sad. She's delusional that she thinks she can fix it. Don't look back, OP, you did well with this, and I hope this isn't too turbulent of an episode of life in the end. Now for the last story. Wife, 35 female, and I, 35 male, suggested we get a white sperm donor. We are both Chinese. I am worried she never was attracted to me. My wife and I have been married for 4 years, and for the past 3.5 years, we have been trying to conceive. It has been tough for the both of us. We both have really busy jobs, and we have a dog that has been sick. Plus our commutes to our jobs are both an hour long, so it just adds a lot of strain on our relationship. The frustration that has been going on now is that we still haven't been able to get pregnant. We have gone to fertility doctors, and they haven't said that either of us are infertile. We have started really tracking my wife's cycles. I have done some yoga, eating healthier, and getting sunlight. We even planned our trips to Florida during the time my wife is ovulating. We have not tried IVF as it is really expensive, and it would completely eat away our emergency fund, and it usually requires multiple tries as well. My wife and I were talking about this, and she has asked me about how I would feel about a sperm donor. I told her I really would like to be the father of my children, but if it came down to it, I would be open to a sperm donor or adoption. She then starts going off about how picking a sperm donor is actually really great, because it's one of the places you can pick out the exact genetics you want for your kid. This was lighthearted. I was like, yeah, it's cool. She then asks me how would I feel about choosing a white sperm donor. I was like, I would be against it. And then she starts asking me why. And I am like, hey, I would like my children to look like me. She then is like, that's a really patriarchal and racist concept. She then starts listing off all the great things that would happen. She is like, our kids would be taller, they would fit better into American society, and then starts going off on how interracial babies are the cutest. I am getting visibly uncomfortable, so she kind of backs of the topic. I'll be honest, like if we went to the sperm bank and all we got are white sperm, I am like, okay, that's fine. But this coming from my wife makes me really uncomfortable. First, we haven't even tried IVF, and neither of us are infertile. And if we go for a sperm donor, we would need to pay for IVF for that as well. And what makes me feel really uncomfortable is the fact that I think almost all of the guys she dated before me were white. And I had some friends be like, dude, she is only with you because she is 30 plus and looking to settle down. And I just brushed them off. But now the fact that we are having these talks already is making me really uncomfortable. I don't know what to tell her. Seriously, now I am wondering if I am even her type. Like if we have an Asian child, will she be like, oh, I wish he was a mixed race one? I am legitimately scared. I'll say this, that the workload plus stress has taken a toll on our relationship, so I am not sure if I should take it in as negative way as I am. Is couples therapy a good option for our situation? Now for the advice. Attraction aside, it sounds like your wife has some deep-seated complex about her race. This is something you might want to unpack before you go forward with IVF. Or maybe she's banging a white dude and wants him to be okay with a white baby coming out. I have a feeling she's secretly taking Plan B or using some form of contraceptive behind his back. I mean, if neither are infertile and suddenly she's super hopeful about a sperm donor, it doesn't sit right with me. Seems like she was just waiting for this opportunity so she can choose what her baby looks like. Ask her how she would feel if you had a white woman donate her eggs. Probably time to put the kids talk on hold and do some counseling. That would be a good place to start, since there is some deep-seated things coming out in these talks. I wouldn't even say white because she clearly thinks whiteness is better. I'd say another non-white or Asian race. You'll see how quickly she'll change her mind. There's a reason she asked for a white donor and not a donor of any other race.